Sim Gill, Salt Lake County District Attorney, thank you so much for being part of 3 Questions.
Well, it's a pleasure to be here, and thank you for inviting me.
How frustrating was it for your office to have to drop 3 charges in the John Swallow case right before you rested the case?
Well, you know, this is each trial has its own rhythm. You look for evidence that's going to come in, and you know, this is sometimes happens, and it happens in other cases, which we have an ethical and legal responsibility to say if that particular evidence was not presented, then those charges should not be able to go forward, and that's sort of what we did here. So it was, you know, you don't want to do that, but that's what happens in a sort of the flexibility and validity of a trial.
Should the John Swallow and the Mark Shurtleff cases, should they have been prosecuted on the federal level?
Well, you know, again, you know, I think my colleague Troy and I have said before, there were different entities that looked at it. There was certainly the Federal Department of Justice that looked at it. They had their nexus to look at. We had the investigations that occurred with the House here as well. And then there was the governor's probe, and then we as local prosecutors have our jurisdiction. So, you know, I think that these kind of issues have nuances and complexity. There were issues that they should have looked at. They have their decision-making process, and we have ours. And so when it came to us, we filed consistent with what we believed the cases to be.
Federal prosecutors had gathered evidence in this case and then decided not to charge Mark Shurtleff or John Swallow for that matter. Do you have any idea what that evidence was, and could it have helped you in your case?
Again, you know, I can't talk about the things, nor would I speculate about what the rationale or what the thinkings for DOJ and what their analysis is. But we've always said, you know, they had their federal nexuses look at. We look at it into the state nexus. We felt comfortable with the charges that we brought, and those are their decisions and their prerogatives, and we have our responsibilities.
How would you characterize your relationship with the U.S. Attorney's Office here in Utah?
Oh, you know, it's great. You know, the new U.S. Attorney is John Huber. And John and I grew up on the west side here. He was, you know, Magna boy, and I grew up in Kearns. We started out as prosecutors. He was a West Valley City prosecutor. I was a Salt Lake City prosecutor. So John and I go back actually quite a ways, and we have a great relationship, a wonderful working relationship. I have the utmost respect for him, and we have a great working relationship right now.
Do you have any inkling as to why they chose not to, number 1, prosecute, and number 2, share their evidence with you?
Who?
The federal prosecutors.
Well, again, you know, there are aspects to it that at this stage would be inappropriate for me to talk about, but, you know, we've always felt that we asked for the materials that we needed for the charges that we are bringing forward. We've gotten those materials, and we've put our best case forward with that. I can't speculate on behalf of the federal government and their decision, and you know, that's for them to answer.
Back in 2012, Danielle Willard was shot and killed. West Valley City Police detectives involved in that. You ruled that that shooting was unjustified, and it kind of highlighted some tension between your office and police agencies. How would you characterize the relationship now?
Well, you know, at that time when we first came in, we made a commitment to being transparent, to bringing these issues forward. One of the first things that my administration did was that we went from the traditional approach of saying justified, not justified, that one sentence, to actually going through a full analysis, which we publish on our website. We want to be open and transparent, share that with the community. That was a new step that we took. We also started a conversation. Remember, when we came in, this was before Ferguson, and we had an open dialogue with our law enforcement agencies at that time. We said, we have an obligation to be open, transparent, and we have nothing to hide. And we should be inviting the community in and making this information available. So we started that dialogue before it became a national issue. And, you know, let me be very clear. Many men and women who serve law enforcement do their job honorably, professionally, with great distinction. And majority of the time, as a public prosecutor, I'm going to find that they're justified. But the integrity of a process is not measured by justify the 99.9% that I find justified is the ability and the capacity to find that is not justified and to present it to our community. And those were the dialogues that we started. And our working relationship is great. One of the things that I had advocated then, which is now through codification became our practice, is that if you're the venue agency that is involved in this critical incident, that you should not be the agency that's self-investigating, that it should be investigated by an outside agency. And so now we created a task force where we have participating partners, and the outside agency comes in and does the investigation. Then that material is presented to the district attorney's office. We, in partnership with them, we make the decision whether it's justified or not. If criminal charges are to be filed, we then pursue that investigation. And putting that process out, I'm a big believer of the process. The more transparent we can be with the process, then people will trust the outcomes that come from that. So the working relationship is great, it's positive, and it's achieving the objectives that we wanted to set out to do, which is to share with our community at the right time, as quickly as possible, what happened and how it happened.
You were born in India.
Yes,
your family immigrated to the United States when you were about 10 or 11, is that right?
That's correct. My father immigrated in 1969, and the rest of the family we joined here in Salt Lake in 1971.
In light of the current atmosphere in this country regarding immigration, how does that make you feel as an immigrant and as a law enforcement official?
Well, you know, that's a great question. Look, America has always been a beacon on the hill. It represents a lot of wonderful ideals about open government, about civil rights and opportunity. And people come to this country because of those ideals. And I think that's still the draw here. And for our family, those were the same things. We came here for opportunity, for education, to have a better life and live in a free society. And so it has been wonderful for us as an experience, and I can understand why people want to come here. And now that we have the new immigration laws, I think you have to listen to what the conversation is. The conversation is that there is a legal process to come here, and we want to honor that. And at the same time, we cannot ignore the reality that we have in our country a large member of in the community that are here because of economic needs and economic concerns, and they have children here, they have families here, and we need to come up with some workable solution that keeps families intact, that respects those good, hardworking folks who are here for the same reasons that everybody else is here, and at the same time, recognizing that if you're going to violate the law, commit crimes, there's a expedient way to remove you out of the country, because that's not what the civil partnership was all supposed to be about. But I think we have to be really careful not to rush to judgment and in a way that we're breaking up families. When a child is born here or a child is brought here and they had no say in the matter, and they are trying to be good citizens, they're trying to get an education, the better productive citizens they can be, we are all enriched by that. We are in this sort of chaos, and the reason because the federal government has not, in a meaningful way in the last 10 or 15 years, squarely taken on this issue to say we need immigration reform, a workable policy that's open, that people can rely upon, and so we have the kind of challenges that we do. But I think we need to be very careful not to rush to judgment and say we're going to round people up, because there are logistics involved, there's housing involved, there's transitions involved, and it's going to impact a lot of people, businesses as well as families, and it's tearing the fabric of different communities. There are sanctuary cities. There are people who are saying we need to take on a more humane approach. There are people who want to deport everybody inside, and we have to come up with a solution.
Police agencies have varying opinions about body cameras on police officers. Are they a good thing or a bad thing?
Well, let me start by saying this, that body cameras are technology. They are a tool in the arsenal of all the different things that we have when we investigate and when we prosecute. And so now what happened is, because of this sort of lack of trust issues that are nationally going on, people rush to embrace this technology to say that this will bring some clarity and this will help explain certain situations. But what we didn't realize, that they're also in that process maybe capturing material evidence that may be of a crime. So now the question is that how do we treat that? If we classify it as evidence, then we have to kind of follow the rule and the precedents that we do have. So let me give you this sort of thought bubble or experiment, if you will. If I have somebody who confesses to a murder, okay, and I have audio and video, that's one silo over here. Then I have a second silo where I have just audio of a serial rapist who's talking about how they select their victim. Second silo. Third silo, I have just still photographs of a bloody assault and with injuries and bloody t-shirt. And third silo. And the fourth silo is body cam footage on a police officer in the line of their duty. The first three, historically, we would say we would never show on the 6 o'clock news prior to the charges being filed, because that may impact the ability to have a fair trial. It may unduly, out of context, to present a situation where it may be unfair. It may lead to different conclusions, which may not be ultimately be supported. And maybe that information may not be even admissible in court. So we have historically treated evidence this way. But now we want to say body cam footage, we want it all, and we want it as quickly as we can. If it captures material evidence of a crime, then I think we need to treat it as evidence. Right now there's a bill that's coming up on the Hill, which is going to try to address these issues, the need for the community to have access, at the same time protect people's rights. So this bill says that as soon as charges are filed, within 30 days of filing those charges, any interested party that can come up and petition the court for that release. That gives me the judicial order to protect the due process rights of people, and there's a rule of law that governs this. Because when I go across the country and look at it, there is no consensus with this new technology on how to address it. And we need to have a workable rule for all of us.
Is it harder to seat a jury when you've got body camera footage that has already been released to the news media?
Well, I think that it poses a challenge. It poses a challenge. Now, can those challenges maybe be overcome? Certainly, those are the case by case. But think about the person if you were being accused of a crime, and it's an allegation, that's all it is. And then you take this footage out of context, not in relationship to the rest of the evidence, and I'm putting it up on the 6 o'clock news, and I have not yet even charged you with that crime. So I think we have said that you have, as a presumption of innocence, that this is not how our system should work. Now, I completely understand the desire to want to have access to this from our community. So the question is, how do we balance that? How do I balance a fair trial and the access to the community in a meaningful way so we're transparent and objective, so they feel comfortable with what our law enforcement agencies are doing? And this is that balancing that I'm trying to figure out right now. And the new legislation will help us give clarity so we can all be on the same page.
Let's go back to cultural things.
Yes.
How do you account for Utah's vibrant Indian, Nepalese, Himalayan, Pakistani community?
Right.
What is it about Utah that attracts these people?
Well, I think, first of all, look around. We have a wonderful place to live. Within 45 minutes, you can be up in the mountains, you can be in the desert, you can be on a lake. So the quality of life that is presented here, I think is very attractive. And I think the world is welcome here. If you think about it, within the LDS Church, they have wonderful missionary work that they do, and the world comes here. And so we have a great diversity of cultures here. We have a great diversity of languages here. The quality of life is good here. The economy is doing well. And you can walk out in relative safety, and you're not concerned about it. And so all of those things, I think, have been wonderful attractions. This is a great place to raise a family. This is a great place to live. So I think those are all the things that attract people here. Now we're growing. There are challenges with that growth. There's, we have air quality issue. We have issues about our education. We have, those are pressing needs. And as we grow, those are the things that we're going to have to address.
It's been 30 years in coming, and you have a new building that you are working on. Tell us about the progress of that project.
Well, we're actually building 2 buildings, and I want to thank our Salt Lake County Council for supporting us. This was really something that was a vision of David Yoakum, who was a district attorney here, and it's very simple. It's cheaper for the taxpayer to own their building than to simply rent the space. And so we worked on it. We have 2 buildings. We're building one by the West West Jordan Courthouse. The other one is downtown next to the Matheson Courthouse. I'm happy to report they're exciting buildings. They're on schedule and they're under budget. So that's a very positive thing to do, and we'll take ownership of one building in West Jordan this year, and that other one we will take ownership and occupancy in February and March of next year. So it's going to be a beautiful building. We'll have a permanent home for the first time as the district attorney's office, and in the process we will also save taxpayers a lot of money.
In the event that this gig as district attorney doesn't work out, you could go back into construction.
Yeah, there you go. Well, we've been working, every week we meet with our Jacobson, who is our contractor, with our team. We are meeting with them to make sure we're on schedule, what's being done on both projects. My team, my attorneys, and we're intimately involved. So it has given me a great respect for those trades and how hard they work and what a great job they do.
Are you going to run for higher office at any point?
Well, that's kind of you to ask me. I think that people always have greater ambitions for me than I have for myself. Let me say that I absolutely love the work and the privilege that I have to be a public prosecutor. I consider it an honor, and I came to the Salt Lake County DA's office to achieve certain objectives. And until I feel comfortable that we have achieved those objectives, I have no plan of going anywhere else. But I do appreciate other people's ambition for me, if not, so thank you, but I'm perfectly happy. My plate is very full.
What are those objectives that you entered this office to achieve?
Oh, thank you. The things that we want to do is we're the largest district attorney's office in the state of Utah. So I want to make sure that we have the best trained, qualified people to do the job. I want to make sure we had a home that was permanent. That was a big objective. I want to make sure that our people are compensated appropriately, and that we're going back to the basic fundamentals of building the next generation of attorneys who are going to take leadership of this office. Keep in mind, over the next 25 years, it's anticipated, not just the state of Utah, but Salt Lake County is going to have 1 million more people. And so how do we position ourselves as an office to meet the challenges of that growth that's coming upon us? When I took over the office, we had roughly about 214 people. We're on the cusp of 300 people. And I think the growth that is projected for us to meet the challenges that we have, we're going to be an office of probably about 350 to 400 people over the next 20 years. So how do we position our office to meet that challenge? And as we grow, the challenges are coming in terms of crime, in terms of the issues that we're dealing with at the homeless shelters, about therapeutic justice, treatment models. I am a huge fan that believe that from a taxpayer perspective, we don't need to lock everybody up. Those who can benefit from treatment for drug addiction, for mental health issues, that's the new model. Over 15 years ago, I helped start the very first mental health court in the state of Utah, and it's given us wonderful returns in terms of investment of resources, recidivism rate, and quality of life for those individuals who have mental health issues and they are cycling through the criminal justice system. So rather than warehousing them, creating those better therapeutic justice models and criminal justice reform, those are the objectives that I'm very, very interested in.
Sim Gill, Salt Lake County District Attorney, thank you so much for being part of 3 Questions.
Thank you so much for having me.